We're not interested in small little tweaks to our broken healthcare system. We're going big and we're going bold.
FDA Commissioner Dr. Marty Makary announcing radical change to America's drug advertising landscape.
Do you think the impact will be some drugs will not be advertised if they have to fully disclose their risks?
Yes.
Promising a flurry of new reports and actions on everything from a new food pyramid to the once untouchable topic of COVID vaccine deaths.
Kids have died from the COVID vaccine, and you're going to see a full report coming out in the coming weeks on that.
How important would you say this decision is? The first decision, I guess, the committee will make on a recommendation for a vaccine.
It's crucial. It's politically explosive.
For the first time, the federal government is planning a comprehensive scientific examination of the childhood vaccine schedule. We speak with Dr. Robert Malone, co-inventor of the mRNA vaccine technology, on what to expect.
When President Trump mentioned a preference for real sugar in his colas, it did not go unnoticed.
When you first heard the president say what he did about sugar, what'd you think?
I think it's a great thing. It was just refreshing to hear that Trump has an interest in our sugar business in Louisiana.
This week, the sugar rush for American cane farmers.
Welcome to Full Measure. I'm Sharyl Attkisson. Our entire public health complex is being challenged, examined, and upended like never before under President Trump and HHS Secretary Robert F. Kennedy Jr. A key component of this transformation is the Food and Drug Administration, or FDA. Today we speak with FDA Commissioner Dr. Marty Makary about how he's navigating changes amid an entrenched and recalcitrant bureaucracy and a public that's grown mistrustful of government health advice.
The FDA has a history of being a broken agency that at times has been captured by the same industry it's supposed to regulate. And so that ended the day we came into office.
FDA Commissioner Makary is foreshadowing radical change to America's drug advertising landscape, promising to enforce laws that he says the old FDA ignored for decades.
I think you noted recently that FDA's issuance of enforcement letters for false advertising or claims by drug companies has fallen from 130 a year, that was in the late 90s, to 3 in 2023.
And 0 last year. I mean, it's like no one's paying attention. But if you actually watch what's happening, you watch these TV programs now, it's like one nonstop running drug ad. And they're always singing and dancing.
Now there's Sky Rizzy.
I've got places to go and I'm feeling free.
Johnny S is really swell, the little pill with a big story to tell.
And so we have a law that says you cannot create a misleading impression. So we're going to enforce that regulation. And so with the charge of the FDA, we are in charge of making sure that claims by pharmaceutical companies match the data, that you're not misleading Americans with these ads. And so we're going to crack down. And so we have got thousands of letters that are going out. We have enforcement letters that are going out after the entire world of enforcing these ads had dwindled to no enforcement.
Thousands of letters. So someone's been studying all the ads on TV since you came in office.
We've been gearing up for this and studying the problem, making sure we're not violating the First Amendment, and doing everything we can to address this epidemic of direct-to-consumer ads that are misleading to everyday Americans. And we're also cracking down on social media ads. There are social media influencers paid to promote drugs, and they're not talking about side effects. We're cracking down on the online pharmacies that are talking about these drugs like they're wonderful with no mention of side effects, not one.
Does this mean the FDA has made a policy decision not to move to ban drug advertising?
We're cracking down on drug ads to the maximum extent of our regulation while preserving First Amendment rights, because we do believe in the First Amendment. So I wouldn't call it a ban. I would say that we're taking on drug ads And we're going to do our part by saying you cannot create a misleading impression. That is the language in the reg, and that's the language we're going to enforce.
How soon before you think we see a different picture of advertising?
Look, very soon, because we're going at this hard. We don't do things for small little incremental changes in this administration. We're not interested in small little tweaks to our broken healthcare system. We're going big and we're going bold, and that charge comes from President Trump, who has said, do what's right and don't worry about what the lobbyists and the corporations might tell you.
Do you think the impact will be some drugs will not be advertised if they have to fully disclose their risks?
Yes.
There is an angle we've been covering on Full Measure, which is a loophole under which some drugs, and particularly vaccines, seem to take advantage of this. With the government's help, advertise a vaccine without any mention of potential risks or side effects. And they call it educational, and maybe they don't mention the brand names, so therefore they escape, or they think they escape, the obligation to talk about risks.
And how do I keep my protection against COVID-19 up to date? With a COVID shot this season, designed for recent variants.
Are you closing that loophole?
The FDA is going to close the adequate provision loophole that you're referring to that says as long as you list the complications and the downsides somewhere on a website, you don't have to talk about them. You can just talk about the pros. You can call it education. Well, when you're advertising directly to consumers, we think that loophole violates the spirit and the letter of the regulation that says you cannot create a misleading impression. So we're initiating action this week to change that regulation to close the loophole.
On the COVID vaccine in kids, what are you working on in terms of trying to track what's really happened in the population?
So it's amazing that here in 2025, we don't have the full story on the COVID vaccine in children, for example. How many kids have died from the COVID vaccine? Show me a doctor in the United States who can definitively tell you what that number is.
I think they would just say none.
I think there's this feeling that in the absence of data, that you can fill that void with whatever political claims or narrative that somebody wants to make. But we have to bring back gold standard science, and that's our charge from Secretary Kennedy. We are reaching out to the doctors. We are reviewing autopsy reports. We're making our own conclusions from our own investigation to find out whether or not the association was causal and what the degree of certainty is. And so you're going to see a report coming out in the coming weeks that is going to make transparent the investigation that we conducted from families who have said we lost our child from the COVID vaccine. And when you're trying to decide whether or not your healthy 12-year-old girl needs an 8th COVID shot this year, which to be clear, I don't recommend, I don't think the data supports it, don't you think it would be helpful to have the data on COVID vaccine deaths in that public academic discourse? I think so.
You probably already have some inkling. Is there any chance the number of COVID vaccine-related deaths in kids is 0, or you know there are some?
Kids have died from the COVID vaccine, and you're going to see a full report coming out in the coming weeks on that. We're starting to see a movement now to healthier food. We are rewriting the food pyramid, which was broken misinformation from the corrupt industry that had its fingers in the government. And we are going to end the 50-year war on natural saturated fat. We're going to talk about ultra-processed foods in that report. And yes, we're going to talk about the types of grains that somebody eats. We have stripped fiber from grains, chopped them up, and they function like sugar. It has a high glycemic index, and so we are poisoning our nation's kids at scale and then drugging them. And so we've got to stop and ask, what are we doing? And what we hope to do is to not use the heavy hand of government to start banning things, but to raise awareness. You win more bees with honey than fire, and so we're starting with a friendly approach, bringing companies to the table. They see the writing on the wall. They see the tremendous movement that Bobby Kennedy and others have been spearheading to say we've got to get to healthier foods. And so they just don't want an unfair playing field with their competitor food companies. And so we're getting to the table to agree on a timeline that's mutually agreeable to. And then we'll use every regulation we have in the toolbox if we need to. So it's an exciting time at the FDA. We're streamlining the process, modernizing the agency, and trying to bring more cures and meaningful treatments to the American public and healthier food for children.
In a groundbreaking announcement earlier this month, Florida Surgeon General Joseph Ladapo revealed plans to end all vaccine mandates across the state, positioning Florida as potentially the first U.S. state to fully scrap such requirements. I recently spoke with Dr. Ladapo about COVID vaccine mandates, where Florida also led the way. Where does Florida stand with recommendations for COVID vaccine for adults and children?
Oh, ours is a very simple position. No for everyone. I mean, we have a very simple position there. There's no grays, no high risk and low risk. It's poison, shouldn't go in your body.
When did Florida develop that?
So I actually issued that guidance. I want to say it was in January 2024. And we had started by sort of escalating in terms of groups that we recommended against its use for, including we started with kids, and we extended it to young men based on some epidemiologic work that we did here in the department, and we've extended it further and further. And now it's really no one in Florida is we completely advise against anyone putting it in their bodies.
As for Dr. Ladapo's idea to scrap all vaccine mandates, Governor DeSantis supports it, and Florida lawmakers are expected to vote on repealing the relevant laws during their upcoming session. If passed, the changes could begin phasing in as early as the 2026 school year. Other states are also proposing measures to fight vaccine mandates, potentially accelerating a national shift toward voluntary vaccination. Ahead on Full Measure, more frank discussion about the future of childhood vaccine schedules. This season, for the first time in over 70 years, U.S. flu shots will contain no mercury. The controversial preservative thimerosal is removed under a decision by a new advisory committee after Health Secretary Robert F. Kennedy Jr. replaced all the old members. This influential group has a packed agenda and the childhood vaccine schedule in its sights, with its next meeting imminent. Today, we interview ACIP member Dr. Robert Malone, co-inventor of mRNA vaccine technology and who opposed its use in COVID shots.
So in terms of the CDC staff, I'm hopeful that we can, and FDA, that the ACIP committee can convince them that they have to change. They have to become more open and transparent. They have to become more responsive to the public and the taxpayer, and they can't continue to exist in this little cloistered environment.
ACIP is the Advisory Committee on Immunization Practices.
I like to call it the mouse that roared. It's kind of had mission creep. And the way it works is that if the ACIP recommends and the CDC director agrees, then a product will get onto the Vaccines for Children schedule, and it will get automatically purchased and distributed.
A vaccine added to the childhood schedule often becomes a billion-dollar blockbuster. The CDC markets it at taxpayer expense without disclosing risks in ads, while vaccine makers get liability protection for any injuries under a 1986 law.
It's a perfect cash cow because vaccines, once they're on the schedule, essentially never get off. They're never replaced. They're grandfathered in forever. So that gives the ACIP a lot of kind of structural power.
It was also the ACIP that signed off on false information in 2021 about COVID vaccines, as we reported on Full Measure. CDC's Advisory Committee on Immunization Practices had just issued a high-profile report authored by 15 scientists. It wrongly claimed Pfizer's study proved the vaccine is highly effective or showed consistent high efficacy for people who'd already had coronavirus, SARS-CoV-2.
It says the exact opposite of what the data says. They're giving people the impression that this vaccine will save your life, even or save you from suffering, even if you've already had the virus and recovered, which has not been demonstrated in either the Pfizer or the Moderna trial.
nobody at the CDC or ACIP was held accountable for that misinformation.
The commission had become a rubber stamp organization for the interests of the pharmaceutical industry and also for the interests of these various physician organizations that I assert are essentially guilds. And so the secretary decided that he would retire the existing 17 members of the committee, which triggered a harmonized cry of anguish from all corporate media pretty much, with specific attacks, especially after he nominated the initial 8, of which I was one.
The new committee's first major recommendation in June removed the Murrow from flu shots. Despite the CDC's longstanding claims that this mercury preservative is safe to inject in babies and children in vaccines, it supported phasing it out 2 decades ago. The Murrow lingered in about 3% of flu shots, but will finally be gone this season.
But if you follow the schedule, your child is going to get a flu vaccine once a year for the rest of their lives. And so the accumulated amount of mercury that they would be getting is not trivial.
At its next meeting, ACIP will address FDA's new authorization of Moderna's Spikevax COVID vaccine for high-risk babies.
How important would you say this decision is? The first decision, I guess, the committee will make on a recommendation for a vaccine.
It's crucial. It's politically explosive. The ACIP has to say, well, now that it's on the market, what do we recommend it be used for and how often?
ACIP's most significant task, reviewing the childhood vaccine schedule, which has grown from a handful of vaccines to over 70 doses. The combined effects and interactions have never been scientifically tested for safety.
So the press is incensed because we're going to take a look at the childhood vaccine schedule, which most parents would like to see somebody reevaluate the child vaccine schedule. So that was a win.
What is it going to take to review the whole childhood vaccine schedule?
So we've got 4 years to crank through this. How long is it going to take? I don't know the answer because it has a lot to do with the obstructionism that we're already encountering at the CDC and at the FDA. So is the Secretary and the President going to be able to use their bully pulpit and overcome the resistance that is rampant in these agencies? Or are we going to be able to navigate some sort of a truce and, you know, with the existing bureaucracy to where they are comfortable that we're not just a radical flamethrower, crazy anti-vaxxers, which is the press narrative, but are actually responsible scientists committed to data integrity and transparency, which is what we are, and that there will be a fair shake.
And coming up on Full Measure, how a presidential preference brought a sugar rush to Louisiana farmers. A small but important part of American agriculture got a big boost recently when President Trump let the world know that a legendary drink is changing ingredients. It's part of a trend away from highly processed sweeteners that have long been linked to diabetes and fatty liver disease. We sent Scott Thuman to Louisiana to find out more.
Mid-July, it is sweltering in Eddie Lewis's fields. He is a fifth-generation sugar cane farmer.
So sugar cane is basically grass. And most of your sugar is going to be at the bottom. So if you chew this cane right now, it's going to be sweet right here and very watery at the top.
Sugar producers got a recent sugar rush when President Trump declared that Coca-Cola would soon be using cane sugar in Coke.
Eddie, tell me, when you first heard the president say what he did about sugar, what'd you think?
I think it's a great thing what Trump is doing. He's selling America. And Louisiana is known for sugarcane, just like Florida, the top producing states in America. And it was just refreshing to hear that Trump has an interest in our sugar business in Louisiana.
Coca-Cola replaced cane sugar with high fructose corn syrup in the 1980s. And while fans have been debating the taste difference ever since, Coke says this change is in response to consumer demand, in line with the current trend for more natural sweeteners. Rival Pepsi has had a cane sugar version for several years.
Do you feel like what you've been preaching has been almost ignored until suddenly President Trump decides to say, I like the real sugar in my Coke?
It's a great thing that we're getting the attention that we need at a time that we need, because with tariffs going up and the price of things going up, we need that kind of help by America.
The U.S. produces around 4 million tons of sugar a year, but that's only about half of what America consumes.
Let's just say it's not just Coca-Cola. Say there are other avenues that start deciding they want sugarcane instead. Can American farmers keep up with that kind of demand?
Yes, definitely. With the new technology, the new varieties of sugarcane, we definitely can meet the demand for America and also export to other countries.
But other states, corn-producing ones, may have something to say about that, as they churn out high fructose corn syrup and won't want to lose a valuable market. Then there's the health debate, with Health and Human Services Secretary Robert F. Kennedy Jr. supporting the move away from corn syrup, though Kennedy has still called sugar poison.
There's things that we'll never be able to eliminate, like sugar. And sugar is poison, and Americans need to know that.
But you don't like that kind of talk when you hear him say sugar is poison.
Well, I mean, to a certain extent, if you drink too much water, if you drink too much alcohol, if you do too much of anything, it's going to hurt you. But if you do something in moderation and you have choice of how much sugar is in different products.
And this president's sweet tooth about to give his favorite drink and its tempting ingredient one serious boost. For Full Measure, I'm Scott Thuman in Louisiana.
After a break, what's ahead next week on Full Measure? Coming up next week on Full Measure, an incredible David versus Goliath story playing out in the hills of Tennessee with a famous country music star standing up for family farms.
Okay, that's it. Gloves off. I don't know what we're going to do, but fists up, here we come. And that's when the fight started.
A community up in arms and a modern version of the Grapes of Wrath. That's next week on Full Measure. Until next time, we'll be searching for more stories that hold powers accountable. Thanks for watching. I'm Sharyl Attkisson.